Hey, it's Koan number 10, School of Athens. So this is pretty much like accidental glitch art. This is image that my browser was trying to load, and every time I refresh the page and try to load it, it would slowly uh, load the image from top to bottom, and as it went, it just started to totally glitch out. Um, this image right here, like with the blue, is actually that's like sky and a tree, which was my the image on my desktop background. So the browser was somehow taking my desktop background image and incorporating that in with the image from the internet that it was loading. I don't even know how that's possible, but that's pretty cool. I like right here that you have like this looks like the entire image actually kind of shrunk down and compressed uh, inside the image itself. Anyways, yeah, I tend to um, try to not get too upset over computers making errors because a computer is just a machine that is trying to follow some instructions, and sometimes it just can't do that for whatever reason, and that can be frustrating often. But I think it's actually pretty fascinating to see what a computer ends up doing when it fails to do the thing you're telling it to do. And glitch art is just a pretty cool thing. Um, Here's the actual image I was trying to load here. School of Athens. This is a painting by Raphael of a bunch of philosophers, and this is a coincidental side note that has nothing to do with this cone actually, but it's a little bit relevant to 108 Koans in general. We have a statue right here of Apollo, and he has his lyre. He's holding his lyre, which Hermes gave him, and Hermes is the shit. The lyre is associated with Apollo, but actually it was Hermes who created the lyre. He Hermes was like born in this cave, and like immediately upon being born, he's like crawling out of his cradle and out of the cave, and he like finds a turtle, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna turn you into a new musical instrument," and he just kind of like improvising almost, and creates the lyre. And then he goes and gets into all kinds of mischief. He steals Apollo's cattle, and Apollo gets all mad, and then Hermes is like, "Oh, wait a second, listen to this," and he starts playing the lyre and singing, and Apollo's like, "Oh my God, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. You're gonna be famous," and Hermes is like, "Oh well, here you go. You can have this lyre, and you can sing and make beautiful music. In fact, it's easy." He says something like, "What do you say? It's easy if you play it casually." And Apollo's like, "Oh my God, you're right." And then Apollo becomes the god of music, and that's awesome. I wrote about that story is told in the hymn to Hermes, which was part of the Homeric hymns, and I wrote about that in my thesis paper, and Hermes is this trickster figure, and that's one of one of the kind of qualities of trickster mythology that appears around the world, that tricksters show other people that they can do stuff, that they can create. You have Prometheus like stealing fire from Mount Olympus and then like being like, hey people, you can make fire. So I kind of use the trickster mythology as a way to kind of explain my interests in making art and my objectives in making art, that the way that the trickster goes about exposing things and simultaneously encouraging people to do cool stuff. Koan number 11, which is titled Koan number 11, was accidentally thrown away, bleeding in public. I intentionally did not include any documentation or anything of what Koan 11 was, because I liked this, having this absence and having this kind of aura of mystery, I guess, of what Koan number 11 might have been. And the only clue to that is this parenthetical title, bleeding in public. If you don't want to have this mystery ruined, then you can skip ahead, but I'll tell you that Koan number 11 was a napkin that had my blood on it. I was in a restaurant. It was probably a Panera or something, but I started bleeding on my face. I don't remember how. I scratched a zit or something gross like that. But I was bleeding. People can see me. It's kind of embarrassing. I take a napkin and I'm like, wiping the blood off my face. And then I took that home and I was going to photograph it or scan it or something, and that was going to be Koan number 11. But before I could do that, Sylvia found it and threw it away. And so instead, it became this. And I kind of actually really like the fact that Sylvia was unable to distinguish between a piece of trash and a koan. And that kind of weirdly, I felt like, validated what I was doing somehow. Koan number 12, kitchen drawer. So, first of all, we have here another pair of koans with number 12 and 13. And also, this is the first koan that's recorded in our house back in Carbondale. It's the first, what I would consider, of the domestic koans. At the time, Sylvia and I were living together, and I don't remember exactly when this was recorded, but we were either very recently engaged or soon to be engaged to be married. And we were living together, and that was my first time actually living with a partner. And so domesticity is a thread that you see come up a lot in 108 Koans, and it's still something that I think I'm very interested in my work. I mean, domestic life is, aside from being at work all day, whatever your job is, being at home in a domestic setting is most of your life. And so I really am interested in kind of helping people to recontextualize that into something that they can appreciate on kind of another level of beyond just like the mundanity of daily routine. Anyway, I think this is pretty funny. It's one of the Koans that's, I just turn the camera on and record, and I didn't edit at all. It's just the duration of the thing, and I hardly expect anybody to sit here and watch the whole 12 minutes. Although if you do, I think it might be a little rewarding. I think there's several like funny moments, kind of slapstick moments. I think this is a relatable experience, right? Most people have encountered this problem of not being able to open the drawer because of some utensil that's stuck in there. And in this case, I think it's hilarious that we reach the extreme conclusion of ripping the front of the drawer off, which then leads to Koan number 13, me having to then fix the drawer. And so again, it's like, oh my gosh, I have this domestic life where I'm like breaking and fixing things in my house, which was pretty much a new thing for me at this point in my life. I think I'm partial to this Koan a little bit also because it's I think the first example of a Koan that wasn't at all premeditated, that I was just going about my daily life, doing something, and realizing, hey, this is a Koan, grab a camera, set it up, hit record, and then just let the events play out however they did. If you want to skip to the good part, I think you can come in at like 11 minutes here where we actually break the drawer off and then immediately regret our decision to do that. So here we have the sequel to Koan number 12, Koan number 13, fixing the kitchen drawer. We pick up right where we left off from Koan 12, and then go into me doing a thing that I'm not particularly good at, but I kind of get the job done, I guess. Yeah, this is a very long video. It's not edited at all. I mean, there's cuts where I like move position, but there's no time cut out here. You see the whole process of me trying to figure this out. So yeah, same comments I made for Koan 12 apply here. This is, domesticity and also I guess having to deal with the aftermath of your crazy decisions. It's hilarious that I used pegboard as the bottom of the drawer. Koan number 14, Our Sweet Baby. This was part of a performance that I did for the Big Muddy Film Festival, and it's based on some experiments I had done with video and audio signals, and basically feeding a video signal into a set of speakers so that it translated translates the what you see in the video as an audio signal. So you're actually like hearing the video in a way, and depending on what the video looks like, it produces different sounds. So I had been playing around with this idea, and I wanted to do like a live version of that where I am like pointing the camera at different things around the room and just kind of like seeing what sounds they make. The title, Our Sweet Baby, comes from, I was using this camcorder that had built in, like you could make titles appear on the screen like by going into the menu of this camera, and it had built in default titles you could put on there, like happy birthday and congratulations, and one of the titles was Our Sweet Baby, which appears somewhere in this performance. There it is. Our Sweet Baby, flashing there on the screen. And then I end the performance by pointing the camera at the screen and then running around on the stage toward and away from the screen. I'm really interested in depth and projection in these different surfaces of the projector screen and the lens of the projector and the audience, and in this case me performing in between all of that space. And so that's, I guess, kind of what I was playing around with here. And that really comes across at the very end of the performance, which unfortunately was not recorded because the tape ran out. But what I do here is eventually I approach the projector screen, and it's on this like stand that it's like buttoned onto the stand, and I like take the screen and like rip it off. But then of course the projector is like still projecting onto whatever is behind the screen. So it like creates this another layer of depth behind the screen. And then, as it says here, I eventually, like, there's all the sound, kind of droning sound going in the projection. That's, since the camera's pointed at the projection, it creates this, like, video feedback effect. So it's kind of this, like, cacophony of audio and video. And I end by, like, kind of breaking the fourth wall of the performance, I guess, and going backstage, finding the extension cord that was powering all of the projectors and speakers and everything, and holding it up in front of the audience and unplugging it, at which point everything, the sound goes silent, the projector turns off, and that was the performance. Koan number 15, Meditation on the Holy Mystery of the Road CD Part 2, the sequel to Part 1, in which I try to dissolve holes in the CD by dripping acetate onto it, which of course doesn't work because it's a ridiculous idea. But that didn't stop me from doing it, because it's fun to come up with just different scenarios of how you might create holes in CDs, believe it or not, and to actually try it out and see what happens. It's play. Koan number 16, Just a Sound, is one of the koans that is just instructions, just text instructions, kind of in the vein of Fluxus scores or Yoko Ono instruction paintings. Make a sound that horrifies you until it becomes just a sound. John Cage talked about sounds being just sounds, and just appreciating them for the qualities of them as a sound, and not the contextual meaning that you might put into the sound. So this is about taking something that carries some emotional baggage for you and recreating that is another example of recreation in a koan. Recreating the sound yourself, performing the sound, and repeating that over and over until it starts to lose that meaning and becomes just something that has aesthetics. I do have a very specific sound in mind for me that caused me to think of conceptualize this koan. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's a very specific sound from a moment in my life. That's it. Koan 17, not a single word. I said the other day that I cannot resist a pun, and I think that this might be a case where the pun actually detracts from the koan, unfortunately, because I think it makes the whole thing seem like a setup to a joke, which it's not. This was an actual dream that I had, like the first koan. And I remember the dream seeming like really significant at the time. I don't know exactly why, but I do have in my notes here from 5 years ago about this koan. It says, trying to discover the meaning of something you don't understand. Is the meaning in the word or in the repetition? So there you go. Oh my God, it's another pun. What is wrong with me? It's koan number 18, protection, which is this found juxtaposition of free condoms and this Catholic newsletter, which is alone a pretty interesting pair of things to put together. Made even more interesting by the fact that this is titled Our Protectress, and then within the newsletter itself, it's just this like kind of crazy juxtaposition of things, which you can read on your own here. But to summarize, there's this article about this crazy combination of oils and stuff that's being consecrated, and then these poems, beautiful hands of a priest, all right, and this rather ableist poem called Forgive Me When I Whine. Yeah, I'll let you come up with your own commentary. Koan number 19, Household Occurrences, is this very short video of household occurrences that I recorded and collected over time. And I feel like I'm going to start repeating myself a lot because there's these themes that show up throughout 108 Koans: domesticity and enjoyment of everyday occurrences. And I think if you if you made a map of 108 Koans and drew lines between all of the different Koans that are connected somehow, I think if you really thought about it, you would end up drawing lines connecting Koans that maybe you don't expect on first viewing. Like you could connect this, for example, to the Road CD Koans, and that there's this kind of fascination with natural forces and how they interact with man-made objects. So yeah, already on Koan 19, we're seeing like a lot of repetition of things that I'm interested in, evidently. And what was really good for me in doing this was that I wasn't necessarily aware of those things before I started. And I think by not just thinking about stuff, but by actually creating, making stuff, and putting it out there into the world, it somehow like synthesizes maybe subconscious stuff that you aren't necessarily aware of, and then once you see it out in the world, you learn something more about yourself. And the more things you put out into the world, the more you will see. So yeah, that's it for this week's group of Koans, and we're gonna plow through here with starting with Koan number 20 next week, and I'll see you then.